Hello and welcome to Dayan Explains. I'm Dayan. I think many people agree that the freedom to speak our minds has definitely been infringed. In fact, I'm going to have to carefully word this video to avoid possible issues with this platform trying to prevent me from saying stuff. However, if you're watching this on Bitchute or Rumble, I'm not talking about you. So I'm going to be vague in describing certain things, but please try to follow. Although I'm talking about the First Amendment today, I'm not talking about the freedom of speech. And yeah, freedom of speech is dead as well. Maybe I'll do that video another time. I'm talking about another part of the First Amendment, freedom of religion. Recently in the United States, there have been some very effective efforts to remove freedom of religion beyond directly attacking the right itself. Let me explain why. Many people associate the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution with the freedom of speech, but it actually protects several rights of the people. They are, in order, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, aka freedom to gather, and lastly, the freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances. Notice which one is first? It's the freedom of religion. Considering its position coming before all other rights, I don't think its importance was lost on the drafters of the Bill of Rights. They saw and were certainly much closer in time to religious persecutions by countries in Europe. Many of the religious divisions in Europe then, and to even some extent today, were caused because one monarch or another adopted a religion of their choice and, of course, forced everyone in the country to go along with the new religion, sometimes under pain of death. In the United States today, the threat to the freedom of religion, for the most part, hasn't been other religions, but a trend towards secularism, or the movement to remove religion from government and society altogether. One of the big tools used today in the United States to accomplish this is the separation of church and state. And by tools, I mean abuses. It's right up there with the Commerce Clause when it comes to government overreach, based on the erroneous idea that the freedom of religion, as was defined by the First Amendment, was to protect the government from religious interference, so that it can in turn not inhibit the people from practicing whatever religion they want. This, of course, is outside what the drafters of the Bill of Rights intended, since they had things like a congressional chaplain. People were allowed to practice their religion, even in the halls of government. They just weren't allowed to use the power of government to inhibit other people from practicing their own religions. This is why the freedom of religion was put in place. They knew that the people in the government would be practicing their own religion, and they didn't want them to get corrupt and use that power to limit the practice of other religions, as was going on in many other countries. However, today, I want to go past the classic tools they've been using to snuff out religion, because secularists have a new set of additional tools at their disposal today. Big tech and medical mandates. And by medical mandates, I mean that you must get X, let's call it preventative medicine, or you're not allowed to do Y or go to Z place. And Z could be any place, like a church. So let's start with the tool of the big tech. Large tech companies, who will remain nameless, but I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows who they are, have been being used to suppress the propagation of certain ideas on their platforms. I've experienced this firsthand. I had content removed once for misinformation when I was talking about the morality, or the lack thereof, of certain preventative so-called medications. Now, technically, everything in my content was true and it didn't actually violate any rules, but one of the rules was stretched a little bit beyond its actual limitations, so my content could be flagged and taken down as misleading. The funny thing is, as I'm sure many of you out there have noticed, many individuals and groups release misleading content which goes much closer to violating the rules than any of my content has, and yet their content stays up. Now, unless you're a billionaire with an army of lawyers, you don't really have any way to fight this selective takedown of certain content, no matter how much in the right you are. Besides unequal application of the rules, another way big tech suppresses religion is the algorithms used to share the content. A certain company, that will remain nameless, won't even let you categorize your content as religious in nature. Out of the dozens of options for content categories, religion is not one of them. If you look at my video viewership as one example, on smaller platforms like Bitchute, for instance, my religious videos are popular, relatively speaking. My video on the Starship in SLS was one of my best performing videos on the big tech video sharing platform. Over on Bitchute, however, it was much less popular than most of my other videos. At least at the moment, my religious-based videos get about 5 times the views on Bitchute, and Bitchute has less than 10% of the users. Anecdotal? I don't think so. The newest and probably most intrusive method is the medical mandate method. Instead of outright marginalizing a particular religious group like Germany did in the World War II era, you marginalize people who refuse to take certain preventative medications, saying they're a threat to public health. So they have to do things like wear certain identifying clothes or accessories. Also, you limit their access to public spaces and to travel. We can see these things unfolding today, at least as of the middle of 2021. How does this affect religious groups? Well, as long as people are willing to fall in line, it doesn't. But what if you refuse to take these preventative medications because you found out that they were developed using some techniques that violate your religious beliefs? Now, you could say, yeah, well, that's a coincidence, since there are other people who can't get those preventative medications for health reasons. And I don't think that would be acceptable collateral damage for the secularists you claim are trying to limit religion. Also, you can get exemptions for conscience as well as medical issues. Well, what they've started to do is to try and pass laws that say only medical exemptions are valid. In the states that pass such laws, other exemptions, like religious ones, won't count. Another type of suppression that's already affecting most of the Western world is job suppression. The idea is to pass certain laws that require you to perform or prescribe procedures or medications that are against your religious beliefs. Again, for censorship reasons, I am not going to go into the details of what these procedures and medications are, but if you're a medical professional and you have religious objections to certain things, you could get your license pulled by the government. This extends beyond the medical industry as well. Professional cake making can be a minefield of litigation these days for any Christian trying to bake a cake for something like a wedding. I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future, governments start to remove the ability of clergy from officiating weddings altogether, if they don't agree to officiate certain weddings they find morally objectionable. If these trends continue, the secular forces will have finally found a way to just walk around the First Amendment, to fully suppress religious people who don't get in line. All they will have to do is to make something mandatory for this or that reason, and just make sure it violates a religious belief of whichever religion you'd like to target. There has already been talk by certain groups of containing non-conformers in communities for public safety reasons. And don't think it can't go there in the US. Just look back to what happened to the Japanese Americans during World War II. If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon, link in the description. The more people support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.